Okay, Professor Michael Lipey back to continue a narration about interpersonal attraction. Okay, the factors that determine liking. Okay, um, of another person and the extent to which you will be liked. Okay, now we've talked about mainly about familiarity and about attractiveness, physical attractiveness so far. But we can go beyond that. There are some other factors that are at least as important. Okay, but as we look at personal qualities, of which beauty is one, we can touch on a couple of those and then move on to some additional factors. Okay, so what can be so one of the factors, besides your physical attractiveness, okay, another quality that you might have, okay, that will affect your likability and the extent to which you get liked is basically how positive you are in terms of your outlook, in terms of your views, in terms of your basic demeanor. Okay, so research has shown that likers are liked best. Okay, so for example, in one study, participants listened to interviews in which someone evaluated many objects, like cities, like movies, courses at the college, people, okay? And basically, the person being interviewed was either consistently positive or consistently negative toward the objects. Okay? And not surprisingly, at least in hindsight, participants liked the person much more than the former case. Okay? Think about it in terms of expected rewards. Remember, we were talking about rewardingness of behavior, okay, of what we're seeing. Okay, so if you're watching someone who's a downer, okay, is down on lots of things, okay, you're probably not going to think that it's going to be a good deal to be around this person. Okay, person isn't likely even to say good things about you necessarily, but the person's kind of a downer. But if the person's upbeat and likes things, okay, you can think that, well, that you can anticipate, uh, you know, more rewards, okay, to come from actually interacting with this person, becoming this person's friend, okay. Now, actually, this has been well researched, okay. That just to settle on this one particular study. So the best liked person is someone who's generally positive but not always positive. We like someone who's positive generally, but discerning. We don't like someone who, we're going to like less someone who, you know, is just positive about everything, kind of almost seems to be, you know, just, we don't know if that's really genuine. The person doesn't seem to discriminate. It's just it's just not kind of a good look, if you will. Like someone who's positive most of the time, but basically can find something, if it's something not so good, willing to say so. Okay. Okay. And so there's something, a phenomenon known as the pratfall effect. Okay, that otherwise perfect people who seem to be perfect in every way and just giving all the right answers and doing all the right things, okay, going to get positive ratings, but they're going to get even more positive ratings if they fall down a little bit, if they basically, aren't always perfect. That sometimes they do a blunderous thing, okay, they commit a pratfall. So the pratfall effect is the idea that people who are otherwise quote unquote perfect, but have had a failing, okay, are actually liked more than someone who's seems to be perfect in all ways without a failing, okay. Now there's a there's a famous example, okay, about it's been studying in research, but a good anecdotal example of the pratfall effect came many years ago when John F. Kennedy was the president, okay, back in the early 60s, okay. Kennedy was this charismatic, handsome, great athlete, uh, articulate. Everything seemed to kind of be perfect with this guy, okay, at least outwardly, okay. And so he had very high ratings, okay, in terms of favorability ratings and the polls and so on. So he goes on TV, okay, and he's being interviewed, okay, and everybody's watching it. It's a big deal, okay. And as he's going through the interview, he kind of fidgets a little bit, and he gets up to, grab his coffee. I don't remember the specific details, but he ends up spilling the cup of coffee, okay, all over the place, including himself, okay. And it was a really clumsy thing, okay. It didn't have a good look to it, okay, as you might expect. People worried, okay, that Kennedy actually might actually suffer a little bit from this really clumsy, out of role behavior that he engaged in. In fact, his popularity increased. Okay, why? He basically showed that he was human. Okay, and that's the pratfall effect. Okay, so, but in general, likers are liked best. People who are positive, okay, and have these good qualities, okay, but we like people who are discerning and not completely perfect, if you will. All right. So this gets us to similarity, okay. Well, let's move to similarity, okay, which is a really important aspect of liking, okay. So discovering an acquaintance is similar to us makes us like them more, okay. This results in friendship groups of, okay. So basically, just knowing that a person is similar to you, okay, when you haven't even met, just giving feedback about who the person is, you're going to like the person, you're going to rate the person as someone you think you're going to like, someone you like to hang out with, okay. So just discovering that an acquaintance is similar to us makes us like them more. Okay? The consequences of similarity go further, though. If in fact we're drawn to a person because the person is similar to us, okay, we're likely to become friends with that person, okay. So we become friends with someone who is similar to us, okay. So what's going to result's going to be friendship groups of like-minded people, okay. And if that's the case within the friendship group that we're in, we're all going to become even more similar through social comparison and social influence. Remember going back, talking about how we compare ourselves to others, typically with similar others, and when we use similar others to help us decide how we should feel about something, how we should be. So that's going to make us even more similar. Okay, and we've also talked about social influence, how groups can exert a kind of a pressures toward uniformity, which in other words has to do with more similarity. Okay, so basically this profound effect of similarity, which we can all understand, okay, because think about what similarity does, what similarity involves. It involves getting rewarded, or anticipating being rewarded for the views you have. Others agree with you, and it's rewarding to be agreed with. Okay, our worldview is justified. Okay, So similarity has this powerful rewarding effect, okay? Uh, and it also portends um, the possibility and the likelihood that you're going to have experiences, okay, uh, that you enjoy. Because if a person is similar to you in terms of their attitudes and also what they enjoy, perhaps their interests or hobbies, okay, that basically allows you to anticipate, yeah, not just agreement is rewarding, okay, but also being agreed with, but also um, the kinds of activities and interactions you're going to do with the person are going to be more rewarding. Okay. And remember, one of the basic human needs is to understand, feel that we understand and control our world. And of course, similar others basically confer that uh, um, uh, basically help satisfy the need that that we have to feel that we control, that we understand, that we're right. Okay. Now, the four types of similarity are most relevant here. Attitudes, okay, big thing. Demographics, okay, more, uh, you know, how similar you are in terms of where you're from, what your background is, what your ethnicity is, and so on and so forth. Um, Subjective experiences, okay, and attractiveness, okay, which we'll get to. That's an interesting one in a moment. Probably the most important one is attitude similarity, okay, but they're all very important sources, okay, or types of similarity that confer greater liking, okay. So Don Byrne, um, who was a, a, a theorist in the area of interpersonal attraction, who did some of the seminal and really important work on the similarity effect. His model, okay, basically goes this way. You meet people, okay, you discover that they're dissimilar, okay, they're not like me, okay, and so you may avoid them, okay. You're not going to go further with this relationship. If you discover that a person is not dissimilar, okay, not dissimilar, okay, there's no impediment to further interaction, okay. So that screen is passed, and you have more interaction with the person, okay. Um, and you discover that you don't have much in common, okay, low similarity. That gives you a sense of indifference, okay, about the person, okay. A little positive, a little negative. Remember the ambivalence kind of thing, okay. Well, that's just a sense of indifference about the person. But if there's high similarity, that triggers attraction, and you're more likely to continue contact with the person, and we move into the friendship phase that we saw in the previous slide. Okay, so um, high similarity, okay, is a major driver of being attracted to a person and continuing contact with that person. Major factor. Going back to the computer dating studies, yes, physical attractiveness carried the day after the first date and the likelihood of a second one. But if you followed people further, okay, from this, the continuation of the dates, even in this kind of college setting, okay, uh, the, uh, the factor that, remember, they have information about the partners that they collected at the very beginning. The level of similarity in attitudes and interests, okay, became more and more a factor in terms of whether the friendship or the dating, etc., continued. Okay, so we can talk about, so don't underestimate the importance of similarity. Similarity is not only a huge predictor of liking, but it is actually the best predictor of the of the of the of marriage durability. Okay, of how long people stay married and how happy they are in their marriage. Okay, similarity is the best predictor of marital happiness that exists. Okay, you'll learn more about that as you go into the discussion of close relationships in the textbook and in a lecture outline that is available on Blackboard. What about the matching hypothesis? Well, beyond attitude similarity, physical similarity tends to be important in romantic relationships. Okay, so we'll talk a little bit about romantic relationship just briefly here, but that's for another topic for which there are lecture outlines about, and I'll also discuss pretty thoroughly in the textbook. Okay, but it turns out that physical similarity is actually important in romantic relationships. Okay, the matching hypothesis reflects the evidence that people tend to become involved romantically with others who are equivalent in their physical attractiveness, others who are similar in their physical attractiveness. Okay, that's well established. Okay, and perhaps you can confirm that if you start looking at couples. Okay, and kind of judge the extent to which the level at which they're attractive. Okay, and also to what extent they look alike. But the important factor is the level of attractiveness. Okay, tends to be pretty equal for both partners. But don't opposites attract? Absolutely, they do not. Okay, there's no evidence. I mean, you have birds of a feather flock together, and opposites attract. The two folk sayings. Okay. The correct folk saying is birds of a feather flock together. Opposites attract does not hold water. Well, you might say, well, maybe not opposites. What about the complementarity? So the complementarity hypothesis holds that people seek others whose needs oppose their own in the sense that they complement one another. Okay. So, for example, a good match that leads to attraction is one person's talkative, the other person's a good listener. Or one person's really dominant, the other one's kind of submissive. Okay, are those matchups likely to be attractive to people? And it turns out not so much. Okay, it's more likely that both people are talkative, or that both people tend to be kind of dominant in terms of the relationship. A relationship. Okay, you can work that out. Okay, and so it turns out that opposites do not attract, whether based on complete opposites or based on this complementary idea. Okay, that's something you should read more about. It's an interesting discovery that people have when they take social psychology. Okay, so moving along. Okay. First encounters and getting acquainted. Okay, so we know that likers are liked, right? Okay, likers are liked more than people who have less likers. Okay, we also like others who like us. Okay, so basically, now we go a little bit into balance. Okay, theory or consistency. Okay. As Heider pointed out, people prefer relationships that are psychologically balanced. Okay, when they're imbalanced, they cause distress. Okay, so this will help explains the attitude similarity effect. If I like X and you hate X, we have imbalance if I like you. Okay, because the inconsistency is I like someone who hates something I like. Okay, and there's going to be pressure in that situation to either change the person or to lessen the relationship. Okay, But you can see how attitude similarity plays in. It's very balanced to like someone, to like X, okay? Um, if you like X and so does this other person likes X, okay? Well, that's that's similarity, and that moves us toward greater liking. It also helps explain the powerful influence of reciprocity, okay? So a state of balance exists when our exchanges, especially in terms of self-disclosure, are characterized by reciprocity. So we tend to, if as we get to know a person, okay, and we basically start telling more about ourselves, okay, um, self-disclosing, okay, um, it turns the other person is likely to match us in that way, okay, uh, self-disclose a similar amount, okay, which of course keeps the balance, okay. There's this reciprocity. There's the give and take is pretty even, okay. But if you're basically self-disclose a lot and the other person keeps mum about themselves, okay, well, okay, that creates kind of an imbalance, okay, and it might push you away from liking that person as much, okay. Um, Now, beyond self-disclosure, mutual exchange between what gives and what one receives, okay, is really, really kind of important. Okay, there should be similarity and balance between what you put in versus what you get out of your friendship. Okay, and you'll see more about this when you read about close relationships. Um, and an aside on self-disclosure, self-disclosure is an interesting kind of thing because I'm sure you might have experienced this yourself. That when someone is basically all over the relationship in terms of basically just revealing everything about themselves, just spilling everything out early on, okay, not something you're willing to do, okay, uh, then that's going to create the kind of imbalance that it might, again, decrease the liking that's going on in that relationship. Okay, it turns out that relationships build, okay, when there is a lot of balance and a gradual escalation or increase, if you will, in self-disclosure. You self-disclose a little, so does your friend, and then a little more, but not one being not never reciprocating the little amount or coming way too much to begin with. Okay, it's a gradual process, and that tends to be this unfolding tends to, which is much more balanced. Okay, so okay, so we like people who like us if they are selective in their liking. Okay, again, we get to the whole idea of a person being discerning. Okay. So we tend to like people who like us, okay? And that's rewarding to be liked. So we get rewarding this going on, okay? Um, and that's a big driver of that's a big driver of attraction, okay? You can also see similarity rolling in. As I said, most people have pretty high self-esteem, okay? We have reasonable self-esteem, so we like ourselves, okay, to an extent, okay, and people who like us, okay, not only is that reciprocity, but that not only is that a good balance situation, but it also basically affirms our own view of ourselves and our self-esteem. All right, so to summarize, okay, so over the last couple of narrations, okay, um, we have seen a number of factors that affect our liking of others. Okay, we looked at the initial encounter or observation of another person, talked about proximity, just being near someone. We talked about frequency of exposure or familiarity, talked about physical attractiveness, talked about being a liker, okay, seeming positive about things. And then we looked at some variables that are tied in with uh, as we get acquainted with a person. Okay, similarity, reciprocity, a balance in that. Okay, being liked. Okay, so these are like the major, shall we say, drivers of liking, the major factors that will enter into whether upon meeting a person, okay, um, you like the person and your liking of the person leads to more interaction. So, that being said, let's leave it there for now. Um, so this has basically, the last two narrations have been about liking. Okay, um, move on with your textbook and with an outline that I've provided to go, and some videos to go to the next stage. Okay, which is close relationships. Okay, so we've talked a lot about liking. Okay. Uh, but there's a lot more to talk that can be talked about with regard to loving, okay, and our close relationships. So that so uh, that will be again a topic of of an outline that I've provided, and it's also discussed. Very interesting topic in the textbook. For now, we now know a whole lot about liking. Okay, so goodbye for now.